Hello and welcome to Podcast Untitled, here with your host Dom. We're going to be talking about the Boston Celtics today. I'm going to be joined by my good buddy and Celtics superfan Vinny. Vinny, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Listen, talking some Celtics. We got the basketball season right around the corner. Couldn't be better, Dom. Couldn't be better. Thanks for having me.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. I know we're both super excited. I know right now we got our first preseason game going on as we're recording. Before we really get into it, though, I'd like to address neither one of us are professionals. We both love basketball, the Celtics in particular. So with that being said, we're going to start off by talking briefly about last season. We finished with a 48-24 record. We made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. We just did not have enough to get to the NBA Finals, though. We fell to the Heat. What are your thoughts on how last season ended for us?
I thought we played very strong in the bubble. I mean, especially thinking about how we showed up in the first series of the playoffs. I would have liked to see us perform better in the Raptor series, being that we were up. I believe it was 3-1, and almost blowing the lead there. But we look great, and I'm also happy with the way that we showed up with the Heat. I think that in the first couple games we kind of got off to a slow start, and then really, games 3 and 4, started getting better. But obviously the series with the Heat showed where our true weaknesses lie. But I think that going into the postseason, I wasn't expecting such a strong performance in the postseason. I thought that we were going to have a second round exit, and the fact that we made it to the finals, which is great. But at the same time, you have to look at it as we made 3 finals in the past 4 years, and 3 conference finals, that is, in the past 4 years, and we have not made the finals, one of those. So that's super hard. And it kind of makes you wonder, like, when is Danny Ainge and Brad Stevens, when are they going to get that final push, because we're right there, and are they waiting for the development of players, and it's just kind of, it gets frustrating after a while.
Yeah, I completely agree. The Heat series in particular, there's definitely a few games I think that should have gone the other way, where they just straight out outplayed us. They out-hustled us, they outworked us, and that's a shame to see, considering one of the big things that Celtics basketball is known for is working their asses off. There was times where it felt like Smart and Brown were the only guys out there really giving it their all. As for Ainge and Brad, that is a concern. We're yet to really hit the height we hit with that first Kyrie season, and we all love to talk shit about Kyrie. We haven't hit that 55 win mark again since he left. I think we fell barely short of it last year. If I remember, we had 48 wins. I believe the year before that we had 49. Obviously, I was with Kyrie, but there was a lot of injuries and everything going on. And this season as well, we had a lot of injuries. I think missing Hayward was a big issue for us in the playoffs, and when he came back, he clearly wasn't himself. Again, Hayward's another guy I know we like to talk bad about. In my opinion, we looked like a better team with him on the floor. I think the offense flowed better, and Kemba was hobbled too. So I was happy with how we played. I would have loved to make that push to the finals. I know we didn't have enough this year. I just wish we would have played harder in some of those Heat games, though, and that was my biggest issue with it this season.
Yeah, I think, Hayward provided a great scoring boost. But, realistically, it's hard to think that he's ever been the same player, since that devastating injury. He made some strides last year, but, it's kind of hard when something like that happens, and especially the first game of the season. I'll never forget that. And, I feel like that's kind of where our finals hopes died. I feel like they broke with his ankle.
Yeah, that was brutal. Yeah, I will say, I'm never going to say he came in and he looked like a max player for us, especially last season. If you disregard his contract, is more, I think he showed a lot of value. And when he was missing, we looked different. He came in, I think he was really underappreciated by some of our fans of how good of a ball handler, distributor he was. He really helped the offense flow. Now, is someone that helps the offense flow a bit worth a max contract? No, probably not. But when we signed him, he was, and things went how they did, and you can't use that as an excuse. So I think he's gone now. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And we got to move forward. And speaking of moving forward, I think we'll get into our off season. We'll start with the rookies. I don't watch much college basketball. I really like to get into our rookies when they join the team. I don't know a lot about most of our guys when they come into it. It's more, you join the Celtics, and I'm on your side. I'm rooting for you. So I'm going to lean a little bit more on you for some of these guys. I know you have some research on these guys, some numbers for them. So we'll start with Aaron Naismith. We took him 14th out of Vanderbilt. What do you think about Naismith?
A great pick. I mean, the Celtics needed bench scoring, and that's exactly what this pick was made for. At the same time, personally, that's not what I would have liked to see at the 14th pick. I think that there were some forwards sitting there, like thinking about Sadiq Bey. I mean, as a big Villanova fan, too, I've always been high on Sadiq Bey. And I think that he really would have fit a good defensive mentality, but Naismith is great. He's a great shooter. His first year was pretty decent. His second year was fantastic. He shot 52% from 3 on 23 points per game on 8 attempts per game, which is fantastic. At the same time, though, he only played 14 games. And now, granted, that's around half a season in college because, normally you play 32 games. Obviously got canceled last season. Some teams didn't get to play the full 32. But that being said, you hope to see, would his numbers have stayed 52%? No. But could they have stayed probably around 40%? Yeah. And that's exactly what we need. Someone to come off the bench and, be that sniper for us. So I think that it was a really good pick. I mean, I know that he was projected to go around there, so it didn't feel like too much of a reach. I think obviously you have to be concerned with his foot injury, but that being said, a lot of physicians have cleared him, said that he's good to go. So you hope that he has the same shooting ability, that when he comes in, because, especially when you injure your foot, that your footwork and, planting your feet on shooting a 3, it's kind of rough sometimes. And, I know a lot of players in the NBA have broken their foot and, did whatever and have not been the same player before. So you kind of hope that he comes back and is the same player this time.
Yeah, the injury is definitely concerning. Obviously, the good thing is that while it can affect his shooting's kind of a type of thing where if you can shoot, you can shoot. And it's why a lot of times those really great shooters, when they even suffer major injuries, we don't worry about them as much. My concern with him, even though as a shooter, is coming into the NBA, the defense is going to get a whole lot tighter, especially out there on the perimeter. He's not going to find as much space. So if he can come off our bench and he can produce it, if he can shoot at a 40% clip off our bench, I think that's going to be incredible for us. That, like you said, is something we were missing huge last year. I really think that bench scoring would be big for us if we can get some good guys off the bench for that.
Well, what I liked about him, from watching some of the tape too, is he was able to move without the ball, and that's the biggest thing for a shooter in the NBA is how you can create space off the ball and your off the ball movement and being able to shake defenders loose. Obviously, it's not going to be as easy in the NBA, but he did a very good job of it. He was a very catch and shoot type player, so I hope that translates over.
Yeah, I feel like that's the type of thing where if you can do it, you can do it. Again, without, off-ball fouling him. There's not much you can do to stop someone who can move like that. I'm looking forward to seeing him play in this preseason. It'd be nice to see him. Obviously, you don't always get the best competition in the preseason. And obviously, we've seen guys like Anthony Bennett dominate a preseason, so you don't want to lean into it too heavy, but it would be really nice to see him just do some of the fundamental stuff really well. So with pick 26, we took Peyton Pritchard from Oregon. What do you got on him?
The simple way to put it is this is the most Celtics pick possible. 4-year player at Oregon. Fantastic player. Typical Celtics player, though. Hard-nosed defender with a knack for finding the basketball. Great overall player. 40% three-point shooter over his career. So, someone who we know can knock down shots. Someone who has been in big games before. He's been to the tournament. He's been in... And the Pac-12 is no joke now. The Pac-12 basketball is one of the better conferences in basketball now. He's hit buzzer beaters before. I've seen it against, I believe it was USC last year. He actually played with Ball too. So he has experience of dishing the ball out. So a very great player, and I think it's really going to come in handy with Kemba not being 100% healthy, being that he does play the point guard position. And I think that he has a great role model in Marcus Smart, and I think that he can be one of those Marcus Smart type players of he's not going to score a whole lot of points, but he's going to come in and impact the game in a lot of different ways. Even for instance, I was reading up a story the other day. I'm not sure if it was in practice or preseason. He dislocated his finger, and he popped it back in and kept playing. He didn't go out. He didn't go to the locker room. No, he popped it in himself and kept going. And that, I think, speaks to the personality of Peyton Pritchard, and I think that just speaks to the culture of the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I don't know a lot about this kid. I did see that story you were just talking about. He does seem like a really tough kid, which you love to see. Again, it's a culture thing. I feel like we do have that type of culture. Obviously, it's not as well known as the Heat culture. I feel like when you think of Heat, the first thing you think of is that toughness. But I think Boston definitely has that. With Marcus Smart in particular, as you said, with the comparison to him. I know we love those guys. Danny Ainge loves those guys. We just love guys that want to go out and play hard. If you go out and you play hard every night, you can get minutes for the Celtics. And this season, there's going to be opportunities for guards. We'll talk about that more a little later in depth. But, we don't have a lot of ball handlers. I love Smart. I wouldn't call him a primary ball handler necessarily. I really like him as a 2 guard. So I think he's going to get some opportunity to play this year. And it'll be fun to see what some of these young guys can do, and him in particular, because he's going to get some opportunities. So we also had pick 30 in this draft. We ended up trading away. We sent that pick to Memphis. We sent Enes Kanter to Portland, and we received 2 future second-round picks in return. There's not a lot to say about this trade, obviously. I just want to bring it up because I really liked Kanter. I feel like his minutes really, really waned as he came to the end of his time with us, but he showed he could be valuable to us in certain playoff moments. He really helped us out of some ruts with his rebounding and scoring in the post even. This was really just to kind of acknowledge and appreciate Enes Kanter. I don't know if you want to say anything on this trade.
So when thinking about this trade, the first point that comes to me is kind of like deferring our picks to later, because we had 2 first-round picks, that we used already. We have a lot of rookies from last year. If you remember, we had a lot of draft picks last year, we just didn't have enough roster spots for everyone. So it's basically like let's get more assets. Let's make these picks go on later. We have enough young players, and we use that later in a potential trade. Thinking about Kanter though, I think it's catch-22, because the way that I look at it is the Celtics need bodies in the middle. They need people who can be there. Whether it's a hard-nosed defensive player, grab the rebound. But I think this is also the Celtics putting all their faith in Williams, which I know we're going to get to later. But I think that it's really them, going all in on Williams. And I think also Kanter was on the decline. He, as much as I love him personally as a player, I've always liked him. I've always enjoyed his personality. I've always enjoyed his hard-nosed style of playing. He wasn't that great. He provided us with a lot of valuable minutes, which is fantastic, but he didn't. If you look at his plus and minus rating, it was horrible. There were some days that he would go out there and wouldn't, really score any points, and he would just get personal fouls, which is great and all, but not what we need, especially when we have so little depth at the center position as it is. So I think that this was a way of being like, all right, go end your career somewhere else. We kind of need to move on and get a little younger. So it's more of this, youth movement.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like Danny Ainge looked at this. He felt like there wasn't much of a difference between a 30th overall pick and second-round picks. You get 2 of them in return, and you move a guy that, if we're being realistic, was not going to be getting minutes this year. I think sending him to Portland was nice for him, too. He gets to go back with some of his buddies over there. I know him and Dame love each other. I feel like he'll actually get some run time there, too. So I feel like this was a win-win for everyone. We can send Kanter away on good terms. It was fun having him here. I do love Kanter. And, again, I just wanted to kind of appreciate him here. We didn't really need to talk about this trade, but I do appreciate having Kanter. So, all right, a guy that I literally know nothing about, so you're going to help me out here a lot. Pick 47 out of Israel, Yam Madar. What do you know about him? Because I know nothing.
So, honestly, I think that this was one of the most underrated draft picks, especially for the Celtics. So, looking at this, so we actually only acquired his rights, so he's not on the actual roster, but he's under 20. He turns 20, I believe, later this year. Hasn't even turned 20 yet. He's averaging 13.6 points per game, 7.7 assists over Israel, a 6'3" combo guard who could shoot 47% from 3 in his career. Obviously, it's always good to have someone's rights in case anything happens during the season and you need that talent now. But I think that this is always great for later, allowing him he's going to play in Israel next year, in the EuroLeague, which is, close to, NBA talent level. So allowing him to develop more potentially to come over later. And it's also great for a potential trade. I know some other teams were potentially looking at him too. So, if we wanted to trade him away as a potential asset, being that our first round, treasure chest, if you will. It's empty now. This is another potential asset for Danny Ainge to play with, maybe come the trade deadline. So he looks really good. Like I said, super young player. Obviously not going to expect him in the league for at least another year, maybe two. But like I said, it's not like he's playing at a high school level. Like he's playing with near professionals, and if you look at the league that he's playing in, you think of names like Luka Doncic, like all those type players. So he could potentially develop into something really nice. Come over when he's maybe 21, 22, and we kind of need a guard, because when you think about like Jeff Teague, which I know we're getting into later, like they're all on like 1 year deals, and we have some rookies, so it could be really nice in a year or two.
Yeah, like you said, he's not going to be playing with us next year, which I think is great. And I think, again, as you already mentioned, we've really learned to appreciate these EuroLeague guys and these guys that come from overseas in recent years in particular. But like I said, Jeff Teague, 1 year deal. But even if we had Jeff Teague locked up, he's older. He's past his prime. Kemba is getting older. Again, I don't look as smart necessarily as a primary ball handler. And then we got these young kids that are coming in trying to fill that role. So I really think young guards on our team are going to get chances to play. And with this kid coming in a year, 2 years down the line, I really think that's going to be great for him. Now, you never know what can happen. You never know who can acquire. But I really think this kid's lined up for a good future. And even if he is just a trade asset, I think no matter what we do with him, something positive can come out of this kid. All right, so another trade we did, we sent Vincent Poirier and cash considerations for future conditional second-round pick from the Oklahoma City Thunder. He was later added as a late addition to the Horford trade. I wanted to acknowledge it just because it happened. I didn't feel right not to talk about him. I mean, I don't think we need to say much about this trade. Is there anything you really wanted to add? I wanted to acknowledge
honestly,
it. Honestly,
I'm surprised that we were able to pry away a draft pick from the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, being that they have so many, you thought that they would have wanted to get more. So I'm actually kind of surprised that we were able to pry that away from them. But Poirier put in good minutes. When he was in, I liked the way that he looked, but nothing that really, worth, like you said, worth mentioning, or nothing that really hurt or helped the Celtics in too much in any way.
Yeah, much like Cantor, he was a guy that, if we're being realistic, was not going to be on the rotation. My assumption here is that OKC wanted to use him to make the Horford deal work, and Presti loves his picks. I don't think he's worried about a second-round pick with what he has right now. I mean, we've talked about our trove of picks in the past. Presti is taking it to another level. I'm assuming that this made the Horford deal a lot easier, and that's why he did it. So, I think it works out for everyone. Obviously, not hugest fans of Philly, but I'm rooting for him out there.
Yeah, I mean,
I hope he puts in good minutes for them.
I mean, it also, not that this is huge, but it also did create a $2.9 million trade exception as well. Not that that's like, the Hayward, which we'll get into later, but it could work out for, a role player at some point in time. Could injuries come into play? So, just adding to the, more, like I said, more trade assets for the Celtics.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. All right, so I want to get into our signings now. I want to start with the one that I think is obviously more meaningful, and that's Tristan Thompson. 2 years, $19 million. I want to get and break him down a little later. We're going to go over a whole roster a little bit later, and I really want to break him down there. Right now, just quick opinions on the signing, just real quickly. For me, Tristan Thompson's always been a player that I've kind of been meh on. He's been overpaid recently. I'm happy. 2 year, $19 million, I'm happy. That's all I'll say for now, and I really want to break down his game a little later in this podcast, though. So,
before I get excited about this trade, I just want to say, no, I do not think he will solve all of our center issues. I know that there are Celtics fans out there that are like, oh, he's the answer, he's the missing piece, blah, blah, blah. And I will admit that at first I thought the same thing. That being said, I do love this signing a lot. Thompson has always been a hard-nosed player. I think he'll fit in with the Celtics. He's coming off the best season of his career, only 28, a natural double-double. And he did flash some range at some point during the season last season. I mean, not that it was, anything crazy, but I think that that's something that the Celtics can work with. He's still, in his prime right now. If you think about 2 years would take him to, about his age 30, 31 season. And, he can grab a defensive rebound. He's always been a solid defender. He's not anything flashy. He's not an all-star, but, when you think about his time, especially with LeBron, he looked pretty good. And to start on a championship team says a lot, too. I mean, granted, you could turn around and say, oh, JaVale McGee started for the Lakers last year and he didn't really do anything. But that's not true. Tristan Thompson got minutes for the Cavaliers. So I think that that's not something to take into consideration. And also think he knows what it's like to win a championship. He can be another leader in the locker room. He knows what it takes. And so that, I think, is something that's also underrated as well.
Yeah, I agree. Again, I want to really break down everyone a little later. So we'll talk now about Jeff Teague. It was 1 year, $2.5 million. Teague, I think he's going to get runtime. However, I'm mostly happy he's here as a leader. He's here to hang out with the young kids, and I guess hang out's probably a disrespectful term for him. He's still putting in meaningful NBA minutes. I don't want to just run like that, but it was a cheap contract. It's 1 year. It is a very low-risk contract. We'll talk about his game in depth a little later, but I'm happy with it. How did you feel about the signing?
I think it's great. I mean, obviously he's past his prime, but I think he's a great option off the bench. I think that thinking about, that Kemba is going to be inactive, for potentially the first month of the season, it's not only provide leadership, but stability at the point in the meantime. I mean, obviously you can stick Marcus Smart there if you wanted to make him the primary ball handler, but it gives you another option, which I really like.
The next guy I want to talk about, we'll talk about him very briefly, and that's Brad Wanamaker. Brad Wanamaker signed a 1 year, $2.25 million deal with the Warriors. It is another appreciation moment for me. I loved Brad Wanamaker. I think all the Celtics fans really loved him. He was never going to be a huge piece on a true contender, in my opinion. But I loved watching him play. It was so much fun having him come in and just when he became that spark plug. I really loved having him here. I'm really rooting for him on the Warriors. I don't know how much PT he's getting out there. I hope to see him, though, man. I really liked him. How'd you feel about his time with us?
I mean, I liked him, too. I thought he was great in the bubble. I thought he was a really hard-nosed player to come off the bench. Obviously he's like the same age as Jeff Teague, so they kind of like negate each other, if you will. Jeff Teague's probably a little bit better of a scorer. But talking about playing time at the Warriors, actually, I was reading something the other day. They really feel that Brad Wanamaker is going to be kind of like a Sean Livingston type player for the Warriors. So he's going to get his playing time. Coming off the bench, being that veteran presence that Sean Livingston was on all those championship teams with the Warriors. So good for him. I wish him nothing but the best out there.
All right. This might be another brief moment, which is funny because, in my opinion, this is the biggest move of our offseason. It's between this and one other thing that we'll talk about in a second, but for me, this was the biggest one. And I'm saying we might talk about this briefly simply because he's going to come up a lot today. Jason Tatum got that bag. We brought him back on the max you can give him. And I'm excited. I love Tatum so much. I think he has such a high ceiling. I really, really think that he could be huge for us for a long time to come. I'm just excited. That's all. I don't even, I'm jubilant. How'd you feel about this signing?
This was the only move for the Celtics. I'm obviously very happy because, in the past, Danny Ainge has, I don't want to say he's been cheap, but, he hasn't been known to dish out, huge contracts like that. But this is the only move for the Celtics. I mean, obviously I love Tatum. I'm wearing his jersey as we speak. But thinking that he's, a mere 23 years old, maybe 24, I might be off in the age. But he's getting, he's only going to get better. He's going to be a bona fide superstar, one of the better already two-way players in the league. How do you not give him this deal? Like, he is... I just have nothing but good things to say to him. I mean, we'll break down his play a little bit later. I have a couple notes on it, but he's fantastic. And this is a fantastic deal. Locking him and Brown up for the past 4 years, fantastic.
All right. You know what? I think I was wrong. Let's really talk about the biggest move the Celtics made this season. Taco Fall is back. Two-way contract for Taco. I think we're going to see Taco play in some minutes. Obviously, we can only see him so much, but the center rotation right now is kind of thin. So, especially early on, there's a chance Tristan Thompson's not ready to go. I think we could see some real Taco minutes, not those joke ones we saw last year. And the rumors are he has improved in every way. Now, I'm not going to read into that too much because every team in every sport says that about every player, especially fan favorite players. They love to tell you how much better they've gotten, how hard they're working. I have no doubt he's working hard. Whether or not he's gotten better in every aspect, which is the quote I saw, I'm questioning. For me, I look at Taco and he's got some potential, but I think his size, as fun as it is, gives him a lot of limitations. We're going to talk about his game in depth a little later, again, when we break down the roster as a whole. So I'll leave it at that for now, but what were your thoughts on bringing Taco back?
I've always, obviously he's a fan favorite. I've always liked him. I think that his footwork has improved, and not even, obviously I haven't seen him, this offseason, but thinking about when he first started to where he is now, I think he's getting a little quicker in the box, thinking that he wasn't all defensive first team in the G League, which is great. Obviously, it's not the NBA, but, you hope that he can develop into, some type of player, especially thinking about the Celtics needing bodies. He's only 25. He's continuing to improve. The two-way contract allows for versatility, when we need it. We can still allow him to develop. I could see him spending a solid amount of the season with the Celtics because I believe there is an option in the two-way where you can change it into a full NBA contract, if I'm not mistaken. So I'd love to see him play more. If his select play in the bubble, he looked great. I think he provided a lot of energy. I think it was a great move, and like I said, the only move.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I do believe we can, at any point, sign him to a full contract if necessary. Again, like I said earlier, we're not professionals, so we could be wrong about that. The NBA finances and rules for contracts and everything are a lot. But I do believe at any moment we could sign him to a full contract. And I'm hoping it's not necessary. As much as I love him, I don't think he's quite ready for that. You said footwork, which, yes, I'm going to talk about that later. I think footwork's a big thing for him, where if he wants to become a truly valuable player in the league, yes, his footwork's going to have to be on point. Again, guys at his size notoriously have issues, and it's kind of the same thing with guys under 6 feet, just different issues, where... Yes, you can point to the exceptions. You can point to Yao, but that's the exception. Yao's the exception. The Isaiah Thomas's fourth and MVP season is the exception, and I think we need to acknowledge that. I love Taco. I hope he continues to develop. Again, I have no doubt he's working hard, and I hope he can be the exception. I don't think he'll ever be the level of Yao, but if he can be a meaningful rotation player for any team, even if it's down the line with another team, I would be ecstatic. I will be a Taco stan until he retires. So, all jokes aside, the other major move we made was getting Gordon Hayward off the team. And he was a very polarizing player for us. We spoke about that a little earlier. But without a doubt, he was not worth the money he was getting paid. At least you would rationally think, because Charlotte seemed to believe he was indeed worth 4 years, $120 million. Yes, that is what they're paying him in this sign and trade we did. We sent him and 2 future second-round picks for a $28.5 million trade exception. That is the largest in NBA history. And I think what's important to note about that is you do not have to use that all at once. It can be broken into parts from what I was reading about trade exceptions, which I had to start doing research on after this trade because $28.5 million is a large number. And so I think it's important not to get too excited about that number because I think breaking it up into smaller parts is the much more likely scenario here. I think that money is going to be split up into a couple players throughout the season. It's good for up to a year, so we don't have to use it right away. Everyone freaking out that we didn't go make some big move, I think, needs to calm down. We have this money now, and we can use it for an entire 365 days. I don't have predictions on who specifically that might go to at the moment, but it's big, and again, it's the largest in history. Anything that's the biggest in history is big. What do you think about this? I don't know if you have anything specific to say.
So I do, actually. So obviously, you being that they did get other trade exceptions, like I mentioned with the Poirier trade, they got the 2.9 million. You can't combine them to get more, so you can't use it, for instance, to try and get like a Paul George, let's say. But the downside is they can't probably use the full extension, because as of right now, when all the contract settles and all the dust settles, they're going to be about $16 to $22 million below the NBA tax apron of 138 million and the luxury tax of 132, which they will both want to stay below. But this allows us to get a player like potentially like a Gary Harris of Denver, or I think the more logical potential player is thinking about the Magic are on a train to nowhere. They're not going to go anywhere. So thinking about maybe getting like an Aaron Gordon, for instance, for 18 million. He might be someone who might be on waivers. I know that the Magic and him kind of had their back and forths, and make that as you will. But it's a great way to ensure that we don't need to trade away a franchise player in order to make the deal happen, in order to match the salaries, which I think is very key. And obviously this will come in handy as we approach the trade deadline, evaluate where we're at, evaluate where our injuries are at, get some potentially good players. I do not like that we sent picks as well. I don't like that at all. I guess the way that they saw it is they did it as a way to get the trade exception. They basically sent the 2 round picks to the 2 future second round picks to get that trade exception, because Hayward would have just walked otherwise. But obviously it's great to have this really large trade exception. Obviously, kind of sucks that we can't use all of it, but at least we can use more than 20 million of it, which I think was the key here. I mean, obviously you get 28.5 and you're like, we can use that to get a superstar player, but you're not going to. But still, when do you ever find a trade exception of over 20?
Yeah, again, it's an insane number to look at, and I have seen Gordon linked to it. I think it's going to be much more likely that this is used to pick up 2 or 3 role players. I could see another center coming to us. I feel like we're going to, like you said, wait till the trade deadline, and we're going to really see what teams thought they had it but didn't. It's important to remember there are a lot of good teams in the league this year. There are going to be some very good teams in the West that do not make the playoffs. And that's been the case every year, but this year in particular, there are going to be some quality teams even in the East, but primarily in the West. There's going to be some quality teams that are going to miss the playoffs. Some of these teams around the trade deadline are going to realize they don't have it. They're going to want to unload some of these older dudes. So I could see us getting 2 or 3 veterans that are good rotational pieces with this.
You know what's a good potential? I was just thinking about maybe like a potential like a Clint Capella. When we think about the Hawks, they are loaded at center and forward. They have more forwards than minutes. So that could be because they found some value at him at the trading deadline. Not that he's like this all-star player that he used to be, but he's still a pretty decent player. And thinking about, where we could potentially be thin about at the center position, Capella could be a great use of that going forward too. Because, thinking that he's only around 15 million. I also like the prospect of Gary Harris, because I think Gary Harris is a great player. So, any of those players. I mean, you just kind of see what, comes around the time.
Yeah, there's a lot of options. We could just go through every team and think of a million guys we could get with this. Like you said, not happy about the 2 seconds. For me, I want to see what we do with it. Now, if we don't use this, I'm going to be pretty damn annoyed we move 2 seconds. And we're talking about second round picks, like you're going to get the next MJ out of them. But these can be valuable players still, and I think that's important to remember. So when I see what Ainge uses this exception for, I'll have a better view of how I feel about the picks. I'm fine with giving up the picks to get this. Again, if this turns into 2 role players that can help us push us to that next level, I don't care about the 2 picks. You can have them. You know what I mean? It's Charlotte. I'm not sure how much Charlotte's doing. They've now signed and trade Hayward and Rozier, so I guess I don't want to talk too much shit because they've done a lot for us. They've helped us out quite a bit, taking these guys off our hands, making it so we don't get nothing in return. But, I'm not expecting a lot of the Hornets anytime soon. So the next move we made, this is going to be the final offseason move, really, was we brought in Evan Turner as an assistant coach. From what I understand, he's going to be focusing on player development, whatever that means. I don't really fully understand everything behind this. I believe him and Brad Stevens had a good relationship. So my assumption is Turner wanted to get into coaching, and Brad Stevens told him, "Come on, let's do it." From what I understand as well, though, he hasn't shown up yet, and I don't mean like he's AWOL. I don't believe he's been a part of the team yet. So it'll be curious to see if he sticks around the whole year and even past that, and what his role fully is. Again, what I read, it was player development. I'm not sure what Evan Turner is going to be doing. Do you have any clue exactly why we did this? I'm not mad at it. I just don't understand it.
My only guess would be that just Evan Turner understands the culture of the Celtics. He obviously, being an ex-player, he understands, what it takes to play for the Celtics. He was a great defensive player, so, thinking that the Celtics are always, focusing on defense, Brad Stevens always wants to focus on defense, because that would be my only guess, honestly. And that's probably all I really have to say much on this move.
Yeah, I thought it was weird. Again, I would have thought it was less weird if they didn't say player development. Because a lot of what you said just made sense. But when I hear player development, I hear let me put it this way. Do you want Evan Turner being the guiding light for Aaron Naismith this season? I love Evan Turner. I was so sad what happened to him when he left. He got a lot of slander, a lot of well-deserved slander with how his play was compared to his contract. But I was sad to see, after he left us, how his career kind of went. Not that it was awful, it was just, underwhelming for his contract. But I don't want him being the mentor for some of our young wings. I loved Evan Turner. This move was just a little weird to me. All right, let's talk about a couple of the rumors I've heard circulating. Now, the first one I've heard, and I want to lead off with this because I don't think it's that big of a deal. Ainge apparently has made it clear that Marcus Smart is not untouchable. And I want to talk about this one because I actually found it a little strange. I wasn't aware he was untouchable. Now, as a Celtics fan, you could tell me that the Lakers offered us LeBron James for Smart straight up, and my initial gut reaction would be like, no, you're crazy. Don't, how dare you? And then 15 seconds later, we go, okay, yeah, that's a good trade for us. So this was odd to me to hear that. This implies to me that Smart was indeed untouchable last season and prior. And again, this isn't me saying I want to move Smart, but if Smart was a necessary part of a superstar package, which I don't see being the case anyway, I don't think this is Ainge saying, oh, we're going to move Smart for a first-round pick. I don't know. I wasn't surprised by this. I was confused by this even being news that I got in my feed.
In my opinion, the only real, if you had to name one player that's untouchable, it's Jason Tatum. I mean, maybe you think Jaylen Brown too, and I would agree with that, being that they're the potential two cornerstones of our franchise going forward. The 1 and 2 options. But I wouldn't say Smart's untouchable. I think that he could potentially be untouchable when you think about the way that he shot in the bubble. I think that if he continues that shooting next year, then, off the table for sure. The dude was shooting lights out in the playoffs. But as of right now, I wouldn't say he's untouchable. And not that I'm saying I want to trade him either. I think he's a great culture player. He's a great, fantastic, versatile player. One of my favorite players. But obviously, how do you not... I think when it comes to certain trades and thinking about, potential players you can get, you got to put everything on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, the rumors were, I remember this being, I believe this was 2, maybe even 3 off seasons ago. They said Danny Ainge was hanging up the phone if someone said Brown or Tatum's name. So I would probably say Brown is untouchable even now because compared to what he was 2 seasons ago, obviously, he's had a great trajectory. Smart, to me, I never knew that Smart was apparently untouchable. I love it. To me, I view Smart, honestly, as our Udonis Haslem. I could see him being with us until he's 40, just chilling on the bench, hanging out with the youngsters with his gray beard. Now, I know I keep comparing us to the Heat, but that's how I view him. I think he could be our Udonis Haslem, even when his prime's gone and he's not really playing anymore. He's a Celtic lifer to me, but I think it's insane for us to sit here and say Marcus Smart should be untouchable. We all love him, but that's just not reasonable. If the right package comes, Smart is on the table to be moved. It does have to be the right package, though. I don't want to undervalue him. But he should never have been untouchable in my mind. I think untouchable is a very strong word.
Yeah, I think in the this is the last thing I'm going to add to it. I think the only rumors here that came up in I saw was the Harden rumors.
Yes, we're going to get into that in a little bit, actually. Before that, though, I want to talk about this one, and this one I want to bring up because I really want. The main thing I want to hear from you is, do you believe this? So apparently, Danny Ainge tried moving Kemba Walker for a top 5 pick with intentions of flipping that pick in a Drew Holiday package. I'm sorry, I'm not buying this even a little bit. That makes no sense to me. I don't understand how giving up a bunch of assets for Drew Holiday makes us closer to being a championship team than keeping Kemba Walker right now. Because, again, it says a package. So for me, you're going to move Kemba Walker and then put Kemba Walker and several other first-round picks. Because, again, keep in mind, we're competing with the Bucks package they put together, which was nuts. In my mind, that didn't make sense to me. I'm not buying this. The only slight part of me that maybe would is because Danny Ainge is Danny Ainge, and he's kind of a maniac when it comes to trades in a good way. For me, though, I don't see this. I don't see how he would think this would improve the team enough. This doesn't make us, they're favorites in the East now. I don't see that as the type of trade. How do you feel about this news?
See, so this is where we differ. I believe this. I believe it because this is the same guy who traded Isaiah Thomas the year after he finished 4th in MVP voting, for Kyrie Irving. And I will say what you will about how that worked out. Kemba's unhealthy right now. He had a lot of issues going forward. We obviously don't have luck with, unhealthy point guards. Drew Holiday has been known to be healthy. He is an all-NBA defensive team. He averaged maybe a little less. I don't know the exact numbers. Probably around the same as what Kemba averaged last year. Should be an all-star. So I think that it would have been a great trade, but I don't think that he should have did the trade or tried it because I think that it looks bad on Danny Ainge because you have a player who left all that he knew in Charlotte to pack up and come to Boston to sign this 4-year max contract deal, only for you to trade him the next season. That doesn't speak of loyalty. That won't attract free agents because most free agents are going to come by and go, I want to sign with Boston. Oh, you're just going to trade me a year later? No.
Yeah, and that's bad because we're already kind of getting that a lot. I don't know how GMs feel, but you see a lot of other fan bases going, oh man, the Celtics look shitty with Thomas and then Hayward. I think Hayward a little less. I don't get when people say that one, but we've been talking about trading Hayward for like 2 years now. That's mostly the fans, but I feel like among fans, that we kind of already have that reputation as well. My issue with it was I love Drew Holiday. I don't want it to sound like I'm bad-mouthing Drew Holiday. My thing on it is Kemba to Drew to me feels mostly lateral. I understand Drew adds that level of defense that Kemba clearly is a liability on that end of the floor. But Kemba has built the chemistry with this squad. Like you said, I'm going to be honest, Kemba signing with us was a huge moment for me. It's probably top 10 Celtics moments in my life for me. And obviously part of that has to do with us being on the younger side, early 20s. So we didn't get to see a lot of those old squads. But it was just the devastating blow of the whole Kyrie situation, how that went. And then out of nowhere, this point guard that, I don't know how you felt about him, but for me personally, I've loved Kemba for so long. It was such an amazing moment to be like, wow, we got another great point guard coming to Boston to fill those shoes. Someone who, personality-wise, is the other end of the spectrum of Kyrie. I don't love all the Kyrie slander, but even if you love Kyrie and he's your favorite player, it's undeniable the mood, the personality, the leadership issues he has. So for me, I view them as a lateral move from Kemba to Drew. I could see saying, Drew helps because he's good on both ends of the floor, but I think fit-wise and I don't think it's worth flipping Kemba and then adding in 3 more first-round picks because, again, you have to compete with the Bucks package.
Oh, make no mistake. I am not saying that by any means that's just trade should happen. I love Kemba on the team, and I think he's a great fit. He's one of my favorite players. He's been one of my favorite players since he played at UConn. And growing up a Villanova fan, obviously, he broke my heart several times. But that being said, I'm just saying that, I believe the rumors. I don't think that these are that far-fetched.
That's fair. Another trade rumor, something you lightly mentioned a few moments ago. The Celtics could/would put together an intriguing package for Harden based around Brown and Smart. And yes, Brown and Smart. Harden makes a lot of money. I think it's important to remember. It would be Brown and Smart. Would Ainge make this move, you think? Would the Rockets make this move, you think? For me, I feel like I could see Ainge doing it. Houston, for me, is a little iffy. It would make sense, I feel like, if they hadn't just traded for John Wall. That trade, to me, made it look like they said, we want to keep trying to win, but Harden said, no, screw you, I still don't want this. It's a very weird idea.
I think that both sides would make this move. I think that looking at Brown, he's a young franchise cornerstone. Looking at, Smart, he really helps develop that culture. That's more of a culture asset that you want. You have Wall and Boogie Cousins there. I think that they would. The question is, should they? And I think that the answer to that is absolutely no. I think that when you look at Danny Ainge, I think the Celtics are one piece, from a championship. And obviously I think that piece is not a shooting guard. Jaylen Brown has been great. Has he been Harden-esque? Obviously not. But at the same time, though, Harden's going to be the first $50 million man in the NBA. He's going to make around $50 million on his next extension that he signs. And with that, you're basically going to gut your whole roster of role players. And trust me, I am a firm believer, yes, you need superstars to win championships. You need one or two of them, yes. But you also need good role players. And the only people who get cheap role players because they want to get discounts are the Lakers because they want to play with, potentially, arguably, the greatest player of all time. But are people going to do that to play with Harden? People are trying to get traded away from Harden. So I think that if you do this move, this just destroys everything that we've built up the past year.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about putting the blame on Harden for what's going on in Houston. He's now on his third All-Star, and I know that's I'm using it loosely with Wall because it's been a little bit. I do love him.
But he's great, though.
Yeah, he's on his third great point guard when healthy, and it just doesn't seem to work out. In Boston, I don't think Harden and Kemba work either. Harden, to me, has become a point guard that runs shooting guard. I don't like him with a ball-dominant guard. And I think Kemba has really become more of a distributor based on what I saw last year, at least in his role with us. Not to say he's not. Kemba is a bucket. Kemba's ability will always be that he's a bucket. But I think he fit in nicely with what we have going. And I think Harden and Kemba wouldn't work, meaning we now would have to move Kemba. Maybe not have to. I think we would try it first. But I think moving Kemba is what makes the most sense at that point. And then you're running Harden, Tatum, and God knows what. It's a scary prospect for us. And, Harden, if you just insert Harden into our team, are we a better team? On paper, yeah. But I think it's important to remember, not just in basketball, but how many teams have just thrown great players together and it not worked. And you could argue they're the outliers, because you see a lot of superstars join up and it's fantastic. Harden to me is the type of guy that he needs to be your guy. When Harden's on your team, you build around him. I think that was part of the Rockets' problem last year. Morey tries a lot of things. Morey tried the small ball last year, but he tried that because of Russ. And I think that was a big issue. He decided he had to. He made the bed of Russell Westbrook. He had to lie in it. And he had to make his team work with Russell Westbrook. The issue is that if you have Harden on your team, you need to always be building around Harden and what's best for Harden. So I love James Harden. I'd be afraid of his fit with us. I feel like we would have to blow up a lot of the roster and retool, and that's a scary prospect for me, considering this would definitely be a mid-season trade. I mean, we're already in the preseason. So I think both teams would do it, like you said. Again, I was a little more iffy on Houston, but they would obviously be kicking off their youth movement, and Brown would be that dude. I don't see this happening, though, and I'm going to say mainly because I actually don't think we can put together the best package for him anyway. Love Brown and Smart. I feel like they can get a better package than what we can put together revolving around those two, though. Harden is an incredible talent. I think it's undervaluing him to say he's worth just Brown, Smart, and even 2 first-round picks. So I don't know how much Ainge wants to give up. He loves making trades, but he's also stingy. That's important to remember. Do you have any final words to say about this trade, or are you good on what we've said?
No. I think sadly, I think Harden will go to the Sixers, which would suck for us. But no, I think that he needs to stand pat and not do this trade whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. And yes, Harden, once again with Morey, it would just be something beautiful, wouldn't it?
So speaking of the Rockets, I'm going to go a little off topic here, but I would love to see him potentially trade for Boogie Cousins. I mean, obviously he can't stay healthy, but potentially if he can come back and look a little good, potentially filling that center role, I don't think that'd be a bad trade.
2 years in a row now, I have wanted to sign DeMarcus Cousins. Last year, it was tragic how that went for him. This year again, though, I have wanted Boogie. Prime Boogie was my favorite, I'll say center to be conservative, maybe player in the league. I loved DeMarcus Cousins so much when he was healthy, when he was at his peak, when he was in Sacramento. I loved him. I've been a big proponent of trying to bring him in, maybe because of bias, but I do believe he can still contribute something if he's healthy. Even in his limited time we saw him with on the Warriors, no, he was not the DeMarcus Cousins we knew. He was contributing meaningful basketball, in my opinion. He had some rough patches, yeah. I just really believe he can contribute, though. And center is, again, a big question mark for us. We've bulked it up a little bit, which would be, Tristan Thompson. But I don't see the reason not to just throw things against the wall and see if they stick. I love Boogie. So maybe I'm speaking from bias, but I 100% agree with you. Trading for him, it would depend what it is, if it's cheap. But I've wanted to get him on the roster for 2 years now, and it has not happened yet. So the next rumor I'm seeing, and I'm seeing this a lot. I've seen a bunch of people say it, and again, I don't want to overread into it, but I think we should talk about it, and it's that Rob Williams is apparently looking like he's about to have a huge jump. People are saying, the way people are talking about him, I'm expecting him to be in the most improved conversation. I think some of that stems from a lot of people are thinking he could be a starter this year, and we're going to talk about what we think the rotations are going to look like later. I don't think I'm ready to say that he's definitely going to be a starter this year, but it's in the cards. He's got the skill for it. I really like Rob Williams. I like what he brings. He's still young. He's still developing. I could definitely see this. Most improved is one of those weird awards. It can go a million different ways every year. I could see Rob Williams making that leap. The only concern I have with that is the roster he's on. What option is Rob Williams on this team? 4? I mean, if you assume Smart's on the bench and he's starting, I guess, then yeah, he's the 4th option, because you definitely go Kemba, Brown, and Tatum before him at least. So that's my only concern about him, is how much opportunity he's going to get to show his improvement. How do you feel about Rob Williams this season, though?
Well, I think when you talk about his improvement, it's not on the offensive end, and I think that that's a big mistake you're making there, is by assuming that he's getting the opportunity in the offense. He's always flashed that he's an offensive player. He can run to the basket and finish. That's not the concern that I have. It's the defensive end. He's always made the small mistakes defensive end, whether it's rotating too late or not switching when appropriate or not keeping his feet planted, to take a charge or the defensive rebound. So I think that when you talk about this big jump, I think that's seeing him on the defensive end make it. I mean, thinking he's only 23, he came on really good late in the bubble. I think he's finally starting to get in and starting to buy in, and you're starting to get it. And I think obviously with any player, you need to stay healthy. But he's great, fast, he's physical. He just needs to stop. It's it's the little mistakes now, and it's the little things he needs to polish up in order to make it, because the little things really add up to one bigger thing.
Yeah, okay, that's all true. If that's what they're talking about when I'm hearing this, that makes a lot of sense. I'm saying from a most improved player standpoint, though, I don't. And this is a biased thing with the NBA, basketball fans in general. If his offense, in my mind, doesn't also improve, get better, you're not in the conversation for MIP. But if the big jump they're talking about is just becoming all around just solid starter from what he was last year, I think that's awesome. If he can if he's like a really good rim protector for us, I would be ecstatic.
I mean, we don't need it. We don't need an MIP to, go to the championship. I don't care about that. I want exactly what you said. I want a rim protector. I want someone who has a presence in the middle, who could block shots, get the rebound. And yes, I want him to finish on the oops and being able to score. That's all well and great, but what the Celtics need at the 5 is a strong defensive player. And And if Williams can be that, that's all we'll need.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like I said, we don't need an MIP, but if he's going to make that type of jump, if that's what he's eyeing, the offense will need to get more than just lobs. That his nickname's Lob Williams, one of them anyway. So it's important that he becomes known for more than that. Now, if he's just going to be a really good starter by improving the defense, becoming a good rim protector, honestly, if he can even be a better version of what Tice was in the sense that he does what he's asked and he does it well, that would be incredible. And yes, I would view that as a big jump. Just the way I'm hearing about him, I don't know. There's people I feel like are acting like he's having this huge come up, and that's probably some bias because obviously the people that are seeing him are going to be people within the organization. Speaking of big jumps, however, another one I'm seeing that I think we're both going to see a little more eye to eye on, I'm hearing Tatum is looking like he's going to be in the MVP conversation this year. And when I say conversation, we're talking top 5. Now, do I think he will be? I'm going to start that off by saying no. Do I think he can be? Yes, I believe he has that type of potential. However, we need to be a better team overall for that. If he's going to be MVP, the rest of the guys need to help him out a bit more. We cannot be the 3rd, 4th seed and Tatum win MVP in my mind. I don't think he's going to be that level of guy this upcoming season. How do you feel about Tatum's MVP prospects this upcoming season?
Well, my thing about Tatum winning an MVP and anyone winning the MVP on the Celtics is that there's too many good options. You look at Kemba, you look at Brown, you look at Tatum, and not that there's a bad thing, but any one of them could put up 30 on any given night. I mean, not that I don't think, I think Tatum should be the number 1 option for the Celtics, and I think that we need to continue to emphasize that. And do I think that he could be in the MVP conversation? Of course. Did you see the way that he looked in the second half of the season? Did you see the way that he looked in the bubble? Looked fantastic. He needs to be more consistent is the first step to that process. Being more consistent, because you know what they say, greatness is consistency. So I think that he needs to be more consistent when you look at that. He needs to place more emphasis on, we'll kind of get into his play later, but, putting more emphasis on driving. I think that he can be. I just think the problem is there's too many good options on the Celtics for there to be an MVP. And do I think that that's a bad thing? No. I mean, obviously, you look at players like LeBron, who's played with superstars on the team at the same time and still won an MVP. It's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think that there are that there are too many good players for one person to be carrying the Celtics.
Absolutely. My issue is I have a hard time seeing any Brad Stevens coached player being an MVP just for how we run our team. Tatum is one of his big flaws for me, and it got noted a lot in the bubble by commentators. It got really picked out, is his lack of aggressiveness. And that's a double-edged sword. It's great that Tatum wants to play within the flow of the game. It's great, that he wants to get Brown involved, Kemba involved. He doesn't just want to be selfish, but there's times where I need him to be selfish. He needs to get in his bag sometimes and give someone a bucket because I know he can. It's so frustrating to see in the first half of some of those Heat games, he would just be chilling. I mean, you cannot do that, especially on that stage. If he's ever going to be an MVP, he needs to learn that he is the best player on this team and that he can take over if he wants to. He just has to understand that. He can't constantly be deferring. He can't constantly be starting games slow either. He definitely picked it up at some of the half times. I don't know if he has a problem with first halves. I feel like he doesn't. I feel like that was mostly a bubble issue. I don't know if Brad Stevens just gives him a kick in the ass in the locker room and he's like, okay, you're right, I got to get going. I don't know what it was, but he needs to be more aggressive if he's ever going to be an MVP. Forget this season. I don't think he's a viable option for MVP this season. I think he has the skill, he has the ceiling to be in the top 10 conversation this year. But again, he needs to show he is the best player on the Celtics. And I think we all know he is, but he needs to dominate. Giannis dominates. That's why he's won 2 of them, I love Chris Middleton. But when you look at that Bucks team, you are double teaming Giannis. You're building a wall. How many times have we said build a wall because of this one guy? When you play the Celtics, you're watching Tatum, you're watching Brown, you're watching Smart, and Smart's only recently really come up as an offensive guy. He's constantly improving, but they're worried about these guys almost equally as much as they're worried about Tatum. Tatum's he's not putting that fear in teams when they talk about playing us. We're a team for sure, and that's a good thing. But in terms of talking about Tatum's MVP prospects, it's not so great for him. All right, a couple pieces of just Celtics news I want to talk about. The ESPN Top 100 list came out recently. I'm going to tell you where our guys fall, and I want to hear your opinion first on where they fell, the order that they're in, just how you feel in general about the Celtics on this ESPN list. So Kemba came in at 48, Smart came in at 37, Brown at 32, and Tatum at 11 for us. Big jump between Brown and Tatum. How do you feel about where the Celtics fell on this list?
I feel pretty good about the rankings. I think that Kemba and Smart should have been switched, to be honest with you. I not that I understand the value that you put in Smart's defensive mentality, and not saying that Smart is a bad player at all. But I do think that Kemba is a better player. I think that he, especially when thinking about that offensive end, and, if we had to put the ball in someone's hands, in clutch time, like cardiac, Kemba is the man. The gap between Brown and Tatum, I don't hate it, but I don't love it. Obviously, I think that Brown was a much improved player last season. And I think that there are times that, they were a little bit closer players. So maybe, upping Brown into the 20s. But I also think that when you look at players overall in the NBA, obviously there is a case for players to be in front of Brown and, Tatum being up that high. I have a problem with the ESPN rankings in general with several players. Obviously, like you said, we're no experts. Do I think... I don't hate or love the ranking for Brown. I think that an argument could be made for why he's at 32, and I think an argument could be made for why he should be higher. So I can kind of see both sides with that.
It's important to remember this is the ESPN Top 100. All right, anybody's list it's subjective. We got to take it with a grain of salt. The Brown and Tatum does seem like a really big gap. I would like to see the whole list in detail. We didn't want to get into this too heavily. This was supposed to be just a little side section. We talk about it for fun. Again, it's somebody's personal rankings. It's not that serious. So I would like to see the people in front of Brown, though, and that would kind of help me dictate better if I think it's a fair placement for him. Gut instinct, I feel like he should be a little higher. In the 20s. Maybe not even low 20s, just in the 20s, but that's just off top of my head. I'm not sitting here counting all the players I think are better than him. I 100% agree. Kemba is a better player than Smart. I'm not even really willing to argue that. I adore Marcus Smart. I love him so much. Again, I hope he's a Celtics lifer. But Kemba Walker is still a better player than him. I could see what you're saying. Value-wise, maybe is what they're going off of. And if they're going off of that, sure, I could agree with this, actually. But it's not the ESPN most valuable. It's the ESPN Top 100. And I think it's crazy to say that Marcus Smart is 37 and Kemba Walker is 48. It's not even like a one-player difference. You put Marcus Smart fairly higher than Kemba. So that's insane to me.
Well, like I said, I have problems with, not getting into it, but, for instance, Zach LaVine was a 56, I believe. That I have, like I said, I have issues with, the ESPN Top 100 in general. So you're not going to get into it that much. Don't want to open that can of worms. But, if it's projected, different story, because, Smart could potentially be a very good offensive player this season. He should flash a lot of potential. But going right now in this moment, I agree with you.
Yeah, this is completely off topic, but I will say, yeah, I completely agree about Zach LaVine. I've never been a big Zach LaVine fan. He has his place. I don't think he's ever a number one option for a championship team. He has his role, and I think that's what he is. He's a really good second or third option, in my opinion, on a good team. Aside from that, though, I don't see all of the love for LaVine. But this is completely off topic. This is not a Bulls show.
Yeah, I just gave you the dirty look because Zach LaVine is better than the 56th player, and the fact that Lonzo Ball was ranked higher than him is what I have an issue with. And we'll leave it at that because we're not opening up this can of worms.
All right, let me say this. Again, I tried reading this full list, and it told me I needed ESPN Plus, and I got furious and closed it and never tried to open it again because I thought, how dare you make me pay to read your shitty list? Okay, I love Lonzo. That is ridiculous. I apologize. Actually, I was not aware it was that egregious. Yes, that is, again, the only word I can even think of is egregious. Moving on back to the Celtics, Romeo Langford, hopefully healthy now. He's out of his cast. I'm expecting to see him play this year. I really liked him when we drafted him. I knew he had his limitations. Do you think this is a kid that can potentially develop a jump shot? Because I think that's going to be necessary for this type of player. I know he contributes a lot on defense, but I don't know that we need another Marcus Smart project where we have a good defender that we try and slowly develop into a good offensive player, especially because I don't believe Romeo Langford has that fire, that heart, that soul that Smart has. Not to speak bad on the kid, but Smart's a different beast all entirely. I think most people don't have what he has. So just based on skill, do you think this kid has a chance to develop a jump shot?
I don't know, it's kind of hard because, the way that I look at rookies is by your third season, you should have an idea of what you're getting with them. Not saying that there aren't players who, develop later in time and, that there aren't players who, have made huge jumps in their third season. Not saying that at all, but I have no idea what we have in Romeo Langford. From the first 2 seasons, I've seen practically nothing of him. So it's really hard to say. I hope so. I do hope so. But, I really don't have much of an opinion on this, to be honest with you, because I haven't seen much of him. He's barely played any minutes, and I have no idea what he even is about.
Yeah, you're completely right. Again, that's why I'm really hoping we see him this year. He has the opportunity. As I've said throughout this show, guards are going to get chances to play for us. And no, he's not a ball handler, which makes it a little bit more muggy. But, we got guys like Brown who are going to play some forward here and there. He's going to have opportunities to play. We are not stacked. Well, honestly, we're not stacked at any position, but I think guards in particular, you're going to see a lot of different guards playing minutes. I like Langford. I want something good to come out of Langford more than I think something good will come out of him. I do think he can be a solid rotational piece in the future, but like you said, we need to see him play. I'm pretty confident he's going to miss some, if not all, of the preseason. He only just got out of his cast. I believe it was last week. So I would really like to see him contribute meaningful minutes early in the season. Obviously, late in the season, I don't know that I want to be relying on him. But early in the season, I want to see this kid play. I want to see what we got in him. I really liked him when we drafted him, and we didn't get to see much of him, as you said. So I want to talk about something I'm concerned about. I'm worried we might have a chemistry issue. It seems like Grant Williams may have gone too far with his rookie hazing. Vinny, Grant Williams tweeted about beating 2 of our rookies in Catan. Are we concerned about this? The hazing might have gone too far this time.
Absolutely. I mean, just how do you do this? No, all jokes aside, I think this is fantastic. Seeing them already getting along, building chemistry. And also, I think this should be a new initiation for any Celtics player playing Williams at Catan. I also think, it's funny because Williams has been a fan of Catan since he was in Tennessee. Naismith and Williams are old SEC rivals. They both played each other in 2018. They were both leading scorers, actually, for that matchup. Pritchard and Williams also faced off in 2016 in college ball. So they already know each other. So they already have, kind of a sort of a relationship already. I think it's fantastic to see them out there already. If this was, all hazing was, I wish that's what it was. It's just hysterical. I think it's hysterical that, Williams is so vocal about, his love for the game, and I think it's hysterical.
Yeah, I love Grant Williams. I feel like I consistently hear guys say that one of the first dudes they hear from is Grant Williams. And that's incredible for a second-year player to be that into developing chemistry with his teammates, just chilling, playing some tabletop games. I love it. I love this kid. I think it's awesome. I love the environment he's helping create in our locker room. Again, you got a guy in his second year, and obviously they had a relationship prior, but bringing our 2 new guys in and making them feel welcome with one of our players. I love this. I love it so much. I love Grant Williams. I'm really hoping that Grant Williams is around for a while just for stuff like this. I think it's great for us. Now, I guess a less positive note, not that it's necessarily negative, but we spoke about bringing in Evan Turner, and not long after we bring him in, Evan Turner decided he wanted the smoke. He tweeted out, "I want to fight Jake Paul." Now, I don't understand this this trend. Nate Robinson had we'll call it a rough night fighting Jake Paul recently. And it seems like a lot of athletes now want to fight Jake Paul. And that's fine, I get it. And you know what? This might just be for him to get his bag. Like you said, he's an assistant coach now. He might want to hold... I mean, he's made a lot of money in the NBA, but maybe he wants more. Because to me, this is absurd. I'm sorry. Look, I don't think any of us who know the Pauls are huge fans of them and a lot of what they've done in the past. But Jake Paul has been doing this for a while. He's been training at this for a while. For those of you who don't know, he was a star wrestler throughout high school. Him and his brother both. They are pure athletes. I know we look at them, they look at these vloggers, look at these kids on YouTube. No, Jake Paul, now is he not going to go win professional fights? But Jake Paul is about this. This dude has been training, he's taking it seriously, and again, him and his brother both, they are athletes. I think they're getting a lot of disrespect. I do not want to see an Evan Turner versus Jake Paul fight. I don't see it going a lot better than the Nate Robinson fight. I just don't. How do you feel about, like, on a serious note, jokes aside, how would you feel about Evan Turner getting in a ring with Jake Paul?
Oh, it'd probably end up similar to Nate Robinson. I mean, listen, I am the first one to not like Jake Paul at all. I don't like him. Do I think he's a good fighter? Yeah, I mean, he looked great in the boxing ring. Do I think it's ridiculous him calling out like all these professional fighters? Yeah. But Evan Turner, he just needs to take a back seat. He just needs to sit down and develop players, because that's what we hired him for. We didn't hire him to get knocked out in the ring. So I think that this is just ridiculous, and that's the only thing I will say about it, because I am not opening up that can of worms.
Yeah, ridiculous is a great word for it. Again, like I said, as much as we love to hate on them, the Paul brothers are genuine athletes. They've been genuinely training at this way more than these basketball and football players that have been tweeting at them have been. I really think they're getting underestimated. And I get it. If you just want the money, that's fine. It's good money, man. They're making money. It's why I believe Mayweather is fighting Logan. Am I correct about that? I believe I saw that. Or they are at least discussing it.
Yeah, they are. I think that Mayweather should be fighting Jake, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, I haven't watched much of them. I can't say Jake or Logan who's better, but and again,
let me put it this way: Jake is 2-0. Logan is 0-1 against KSI. Jake is 2-0. Yes, he didn't fight professional fighters, but he did fight an athlete and in Nate Robinson. So that is saying something.
Super off topic. I would like to follow this thread for a very short amount of time. Last thing I'll say. To be fair, I do believe Logan had the much tougher fights in KSI. During one of those fights, I know Logan fought KSI's little brother, who is, I find it hard to call Deji even an athlete. I realize we're getting into like YouTube stuff that a lot of basketball fans probably have no interest in, but I'll end it with that. Either way, Mayweather, one of my favorite fighters of all time. That's going to be ugly, but you know what? They're gonna get that money, and that's what it's about at this point. It's why he fought McGregor. But let's move on. Let's get back to the Celtics. We apologize for that little detour into fighting and YouTube. So one more thing that popped up on social media very recently. This one, Brad Stevens has said that Tatum is now 6'10". Donovan Mitchell doubted him. Donovan Mitchell replied to the tweet saying, "Why you lying, Jason Tatum? Do you think Tatum really grew to 6'10"? He was 6'8" last season." No.
I would like to see him like next to like something you measure his height. Like I would love to see that picture, because it's very rare. I mean, yes, you have a lot of these young players. Yes, Jason Tatum is 23, but yes, everyone's genes are different. But we are also 23. When's the last time that you grew an inch, even half of an inch? Years probably. So my point is that. Could it be possible? Of course. Am I sitting next to Jason Tatum right now, and can I tell you that he's not 6'10"? No, obviously I don't know that. But it's very rare for players to grow in the NBA.
Yeah, we've seen it. Giannis did it. Giannis had a big Durant, I believe, grew 2 inches. As far as I know, I was reading a little bit. I don't know many guys of note that grew more than 2 inches. I think 3 was the most I saw. So it would be shocking. Yeah, everyone's different though. You never know. My father grew till he was 25, I believe it was. And that's can be typical. So I don't know when we get the official height listings. I'd be interested to see that when it comes out because obviously they have much stricter rules now. We got a lot of last year. It was a big thing to talk about was how tall is everybody because they had to give the real one. So I don't know when that. I don't know if we already got that. Maybe we're talking about something that's irrelevant because the league's already said no. Tatum is 6'10". It's possible. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not sure I'm buying that. I don't know who. Again, I don't even know who's Brad's saying that to. I don't know why Brad Stevens is the one talking about his height. I don't think the coaches measure the players.
Well, let's see him stand next to Kevin Durant on Christmas Day. Kevin Durant is 6'11", so if he's right under him, then I'll believe it.
Yeah, that will be quite telling. Again, that's how we knew about Durant lying about his height for so long, as we watched him tower over dudes that were allegedly his height. So that's fair. Again, a couple fun things to talk about there. We'll see Tatum in the regular season. I think 6'8" or 6'10", he's going to come out and he's going to ball out, so it doesn't matter that much to me. All right, let's finally get into the season upcoming. We're going to talk about everyone a little bit for the most part, but right now let me talk about who's on the roster. We have at the guard position, and I tried to bring this into guards, wings, and bigs the best I can. You can disagree with some of them, and that's fair. I did it the best I could. Guards, we have Kemba, Marcus Smart, Jeff Teague, Javonte Greenback, Peyton Pritchard, Tremont Waters, Carson Edwards. The wings, we have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Aaron Naismith, Romeo Langford, and Semi Ojeleye back. And the bigs, we had Daniel Tice, Tristan Thompson, both Williams, Grant and Rob, and Taco Fall in that two-way contract. Left the rookie Yam off. Obviously, he'll be playing in Israel this year. So we'll start with the guards here. I don't think we need to say much about Kemba or Smart. I think for the most part they speak about themselves. We've said a lot about them already, I feel. But we're going to talk about the other guys other than Pritchard because we already spoke about him in depth. Or Vinny did anyway. Thank you for that. Let's talk about Jeff Teague first, the newer addition to the team. I said this earlier, though. Teague is past his prime. But I still think he can give us 10 and 5 off the bench. I don't think that's crazy to think he'll give us. But he's another, I would say, defensive liability, which is scary for me out of our guard position. It's not ideal. Smart and Brown are the only truly reliable defenders running guard. I mean, you can talk about Romeo Langford, but we haven't seen much from him. I can't call him a reliable defender. We know he's a good defender. I don't know if I can say reliable. We haven't seen him much. So I like Jeff Teague. I like what he could bring to the offense, but another defensive liability at guard scares me. That we seem to love them. Kyrie, Kemba, Isaiah, Carson Edwards, for that matter, if we want to talk about guys we're going to talk about in a few minutes. We love these defensive liabilities at guard, and it scares me a little bit on that front. How'd you feel about the Teague signing and him as a player more so?
I mean, I think he's great. I think you kind of, hit the nail on the head. All we need is 10 and 5 of him. I think that obviously in a starting role, he can give us a little bit more than that. I think that he can give us a good veteran presence, helping these young guards. So I don't really have much more to add. I think I always thought Teague was a pretty solid player, all-around player. So I think he's pretty good. Obviously, a little bit on the slower side now, but I think he'll be a nice addition.
All right. Javonte Green, he had a very long road to where he is now. But here he is. He's in his second season. He's 27 years old. He had a lot to get here, man. He had back problems. He spent 4 years in college. He spent 3 years overseas in 3 different countries. I don't remember off the top of my head which 3 they were, but I believe he was in Italy at one point. He was in 3 different countries, though, if I remember correctly. He's worked hard. We haven't seen much of him, but he's super athletic and he's tough, and that's really the most we know about him, unfortunately. He's been exciting. We've seen him do some crazy stuff. If you look back at his old tapes, which I know isn't helpful for him right now, but he's a super athletic dude. He will pull off some crazy in-game dunks. And while that's fun, that's obviously not conducive to a productive player. But he's just... We were talking about Celtics culture earlier a bunch, and I think he's another one of those guys. I think he fits the culture really well. I'm rooting for him. I hope he stays healthy. I hope we get to see him play a little bit. I hope he gets a chance. If he gets a chance, I'll be happy with him. How do you feel about him?
Yeah. I mean, I'll be the first to admit that you know a lot more about him than I do. But I think it's great. I mean, I think, now that we've seen, kind of these Euro players kind of develop more, seeing the value in playing overseas. So, hope that he served them well. 27 would be your quote unquote prime years. So you hope that, he comes in, kind of ready to play and contribute. I mean, I don't think he's going to give us much more than 10 minutes a night. But I think that it's someone that, could provide some athleticism and some energy coming off the bench. So I think it could be good. And I think he could potentially develop into something great. That's all I really have to say on him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He's a tough one. We've seen so little of him, and he was a rookie at 26, and that's tough. But he went through a lot to get here. Again, I think he fits the culture pretty well. I'll let you take the lead on this next guy because I took it in the last couple. But let's get into Tremont Waters a little bit. What do you guys say about him?
Interesting. He looked pretty good last year, in the selected minutes that he played. I would like to see him develop more, in terms of his shot selection. Obviously, he is on the younger side, if I'm not mistaken. Not a bad player. When you think of your typical Celtics type player, he can kind of fit in. But like I said, he's one of those guys that's going to give us, no more than 10 minutes a night anyway. So, as much as I think that he can be a pretty solid player, he's not going to be someone that we're going to see as a big contributor. And I think that that's reasonable to expect of him, maybe 5 points a night or something like that. Very base level contributor.
Yeah, my worry with Tremont was what we saw of him at the NBA level. He played 11 games. He shot 29% from the field and 17% from three in those games. Now, you look at him, though, for what he did in the G League this year. He was the G League Rookie of the Year. He had 18 points and 7 assists per game, 43% from the field, 35% from three. And that's over 36 games. That's drastically different from what we saw from him in those 11 NBA games. So you got to look at his G League, what he did last year, to get excited about him. He's a smart kid. One of the things he shows a lot of is IQ. He got a lot of basketball IQ, and he has a great handle, which is something, is fun to watch. His passing's great as well. He's 7 assists in the G League. I think he's definitely a great playmaker. He needs to be an efficient scorer at the NBA level, though, for him. That's what I need from him. I need my guard to be at least somewhat efficient, unless you're, again, we keep talking about him, but unless you're at a Marcus Smart level of hustle and defense, I need my guard to be at least somewhat of an efficient scorer, no matter how you score your buckets. You got to get them efficiently, and that's something he struggled with at the NBA level. Whether that be because of the tighter defense or just not getting a lot of reps with the team, I don't know what it is. I'd like to see more of him, though. Again, G League Rookie of the Year. G League doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but it's nice to see him ball out at that level in his first season there.
Of course. I mean, obviously the talent level between the NBA and G League is drastically different. So talking about, someone's Rookie of the Year is not going to always translate to the NBA level. But like I said, going back to, shot selection, 17% from three. And, I understand that, shooter's going to shoot and, eventually it'll start dropping. But just being a little bit more patient and getting better looks, I felt that a lot of his shots last year seemed rushed. And that, led to, him... not making as many shots and thinking about in the G League, he's probably the primary ball handler. So, think about what that potentially looked like too. So I'm curious to see what happens to him in year two.
Yeah, and, speaking of inefficiency, chucking up shots, rush shots, Carson Edwards. Carson Edwards is a guy that I think all the Celtics fans looked at, and we so badly wanted to see that Isaiah Thomas potential in him. Right now, that worries me. He shot 32% from the field almost. I believe it was 31.6 was the exact number from three, which isn't awful. But as a guy who's known as a sniper and I believe he's 5'11", 5'10", if you're known for something, you got to be good at it. And 32% is not a number I look at and say, oh, that guy's a shooter. And the scary thing is that he played 13 G League games, and in those games he shot 28% from three. So I can't blame his mediocre three-point shooting on the tough NBA defense or anything, because he shot worse in his G League games. He did shoot 43% from the field in his G League games, which is nice to see he managed to make up for it in other ways, but you're known as a sniper, And at 5'10", if you're known for something, I believe he's 5'11", I may be discrediting him, but if you're known for something, you got to be good at it because you're not going to get a lot of opportunities at that size. Even Isaiah Thomas, I don't believe he's on a team right now. At that size, you got to bring it. You cannot be mediocre. If he was 6'8" and he was a 32% three-point shooter, sure, you could probably find a roster spot in other ways. But at his size, it's tough to see. And from what I've seen from him, I know he's young. I hate to talk bad about the young kids like this, but I don't see the potential that we were hoping for. I think, we saw little Carson and we got excited because of how much we loved Isaiah. I don't believe they're comparable at all. Isaiah was productive before he got to us. I think people forget that. He was great with us. He was productive in Phoenix. I think he was productive in Sacramento. I think people forget that. I don't see that in Carson. Do you feel differently?
It's hard. I had a lot of hope for him. I really wanted him to be really good. He looked fantastic in the preseason last season. He looked great in college, and he was kind of always that tough player that I really wanted him to be. But sadly, it just didn't work out in the first season, and I think that that's okay. I like the fact that he kept shooting because, like I said, shooter's gonna shoot, and eventually, he's gonna, shots are gonna fall. But it's tough, man. It's tough, and especially at that height, it's tough to get the separation. I think that he needs to continue to work on his handles, work on his shot selection, and just be more patient. But I think that he can be a good catch and shoot bench scorer, and I just think that kind of comes with time. I think as he continues to develop, I think we could see him getting better, and I'm hoping for a little bit better in year 2, and I think he'll get more minutes this year. I think he'll spend more time on the roster. I think he'll get more minutes. So I think that could change a little bit.
I hope it does, man. I really do. Again, I think you nailed it on the head for all Celtics fans. We really wanted to see Carson Edwards succeed. And I think it was the residual Isaiah Thomas love. I think it was sad to see the way he went. Ainge clearly made the right decision. Imagine had we paid Imagine had we paid Isaiah Thomas a max that year. Now you could say, well, staying in Boston, things could be on differently. Sure, but he was injured. I just don't see it going.
He was injured in Boston.
He was not going to be another top 5 MVP guy. So as much as we hated to see it go, I think we all know Ainge made the right move, and that's why I feel like we kind of wanted Carson to make up for that. Unfortunately, I don't see it, but I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he does great things. So let's move on to the wings now. And like we said with Kemba and Smart, I don't think we need to talk about Tatum and Brown a whole lot. I feel like they've come up a lot already. We've talked about Naismith already. So with Romeo also being a guy we discussed already, that really just leaves Semi Ojeleye. And I don't have much to say about him. While he isn't going to do much on the offensive end of the floor, he's a solid defender at times. And I think he's mainly still here because of the Hayward trade, and I think that's the only reason he's here. I like him. I do like him. But as a player, I think if we held on to Hayward, he would be one of those guys that kind of fell the way of Cantor, getting traded for a second-round pick if he was worth that to a team.
I mean, I think he's on the younger side, so I think that there's still time, kind of to develop. And, I think that he provided some valuable minutes in the playoffs. Obviously, I think Wanamaker was better in the playoffs. But I think that Ojeleye provided some valuable minutes in the playoffs. And if you look at his three-point shooting in some of those games, especially against the Raptors and the Heat, he looked pretty good. So, you hope that he keeps it up, and you hope that he can continue, and you'll continue to be a mentor to some of these young players. But overall, I like him as a player. I think that he's the person that when you look on the bench, he's going to be one of the more minute-heavy players that we find on our bench.
Yeah, I do like Semi. He concerns me. Offense can be streaky. You're right. He has some moments where he looks great shooting from 3. He has other moments where you see him take a wide open 3 and you go, oh no, please don't do that, because he's just having one of those games. Semi's a rough guy right now, and you are right. We didn't draft him that long ago. He could develop some more, and again, he's shown flashes of being a very good defender. It was obviously 99% a joke, but at one point we were calling him the Giannis stopper, having him go up against Giannis. Obviously that was a joke, but he has defensive potential, to find a spot on a roster. I don't want to completely discredit him, but I do believe had Hayward stayed, he was going to go the Cantor way, the Poirier way. He was going to get moved for a pick. And speaking of Cantor and Poirier, let's talk about the bigs that are still on the roster, because there's not many of them, and I want to talk about all of them really, other than Rob Williams, because I feel like we covered him pretty in depth already. But the rest of them haven't come up too much other than brief mentionings. So we'll lead off with Daniel Tice. I have a lot to say about him, actually. I believe he was super underrated last year, and I don't think that's my bias. And I do think a lot of Celtics fans would agree with me. I know, again, I don't think it's bias. It became a joke among us, I would say, but he's an amazing sealer. I know that became a big joke calling him the seal, but he was, if you can watch, you can find a highlight video of him sealing people, and it's impressive. He's really good at it. He's solid all around, man. He works hard on defense. He can hit an open jumper. He can score down low. He's a very good and willing screener as well as a sealer. He's great on the pick and seal. If I don't even know if that's a real term, rather. He's not incredible at anything other than the sealing, obviously. But he's solid at what he does, and he does what he needs to do. You know, if you ask him to go do something, he's going to go do it to the best of his ability. My one complaint with him is crashing the boards. This is probably unrealistic, but if he's the primary starter this year, I would love to see him get those numbers up to around 8 per game. That might be asking me much, but it's because it's adding almost 2 rebounds per game, I believe, to what he's been averaging, but I would really like to see him push those rebound numbers up a little bit. You know, for the starting center, I don't like seeing 6 rebounds in a game. I just don't. How do you feel about Tice?
Oh, I loved his play last year. I thought that he improved tremendously. I think that, you know, when you think of your prototypical type center, now in the modern NBA, you think about a center who can hit from downtown, and his range improved tremendously, able to space out the floor. Obviously, I agree. I would like to see him crash the boards more. I think that he has the physicality to do it. I just don't think he always has that drive or effort to do it, but I do think that he's out there and he's going to give you, you know, maximum effort all the time, and I would like to see him put that more towards the boards. But I think that as an overall player last year and what he looked like, he did great. Obviously, you know, didn't solve our issues being that Bam, you know, dominated in the finals, but do I think that it went a long way in showing that he could start for us and be successful at it? Absolutely.
Yeah, again, he does what he needs to do, and he does it well. He's not an incredible player, and we don't ask him of that. You know, I believe he's 27, 28, so it's not like he's developing either. But he's one of those guys that any team you love to have him on your roster, because he does what you want from him, and he does it well. He does it to the best of his ability, and he's hard worker. You know, he doesn't take plays off for the most part. He's just a really good guy to have on a team. You know, if he rebounded well, he would genuinely be like a really, really good starter. I already think he's a good starting center, but if he could elevate the rebounding, he'd be a great starter. But right now we haven't seen that, and that's why we brought in Tristan Thompson. You know, rebounding was an issue for us. Way too often I would watch us give up second, third, fourth, even fifth chance baskets to opposing teams. And that's why Tristan Thompson is here. If he averages double-digit rebounds for us this season, he will be the first Celtic to do so since Al Jefferson in the 06-07 season. For context, we've played 13 seasons since then, and in that season, Rajon Rondo was a rookie. Ray Allen was in Seattle, Kevin Garnett was in Minnesota, and Delonte West was on our team and had his best scoring season of his career. So think about that. That's the potential Tristan Thompson is bringing to the team, to rebound it. And that's mostly what we asked of him. I know you spoke about him a little bit earlier, but is there anything you wanted to add about Tristan Thompson?
No, I think everything I kind of said earlier kind of cements it. You know, I think that he could be a really good defensive player for us. And yeah, we're mostly asking him to rebound and you know, be that body in the middle. And I feel like that's all we need of him, and that's exactly what he can be. And I think that he can do a good job of that. Like I said, I don't think he'll solve all of our issues, but I think that it's going in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. I liked the signing. Again, I've never been a huge fan of his, but I do like the signing. I think the price point was good. I think he fills a need that we had, and that's very important. The next guy I want to talk about is Grant Williams. I'll let you take the lead on Grant. What do you guys say about him?
Well, first, I think it's funny that he's under bigs. You know, we were kind of talking about this earlier, the fact that he's 6'6", yes, and you know, listed as a big, and you know, mostly plays the 4 or the 5 position. But super athletic guy. I know he can score. Obviously, did not start off great shooting three at all last season. It was horrible. But when you look at his tape, especially in college, he was a fantastic scorer. So I think he has the potential, and I think he's going to continue to develop. And I would love to see him put in some heavy minutes this year. I mean, he put in some heavy minutes last year, but I think he could be our heaviest minute guy off the bench besides Smart. Provided that he doesn't start. So I think Williams has the potential to be a really, really good player. I don't think he'll be an all-star, but I think he could be a really, really good player.
Yeah, Grant's one of those guys where I think he really had a rough time adjusting to the NBA. And we saw him pick it up, though, as his rookie season progressed. I really liked what we saw of him. And yes, Grant Williams is 6'6", and I struggled with this because I read his height and I said, that's a wing. And then I watch him play in Celtics games and I say, that's a power forward. And I find it hard to argue with myself on that point. Now, I'm comfortable with him playing any position that's not point guard or center, honestly, for most nights because of how interchangeable the NBA has become recently with positions. I guess shooting guard might be a bit of a stretch for him, but again, the three-point shooting for him, I do expect to be improved. I think he's a capable three-point shooter talent-wise. Like you said, he struggled early. That was another thing. It became a very big joke among us Celtics fans. It's very exciting when he hit that first three. But Grant Williams, as we said earlier, is a great locker room presence. He's a hard-working kid. I'm expecting really big things from him in the sense of being a role player. Obviously, as you said, all-star, I don't believe is going to be on the table for him maybe ever in his career. But I think Grant Williams can genuinely be a very good rotational piece on a very good team. I do believe that. I think he's got that type of potential. I think Grant Williams' potential is one of those glue guys in the league. One of those guys that he might end up bouncing around a little bit from team to team, but he's always going to be a guy that teams are happy to have. Kind of, in the same vein as Jay Crowder. Not necessarily the same skill set, but that type of guy, Jay Crowder, or another ex-Celtic, Aaron Baines, where he's going to bounce around a little bit. He's not an untouchable guy, but he's valuable to teams. All right, now let's talk about the guy that everybody wants to hear about. If you clicked on this, it's probably because you wanted to hear about this guy. Let's talk about Taco Fall some more. I know we already spoke about him. We love him. Yeah, I don't know what you want me to say, man. He's amazing. And the best part is that he could legitimately get meaningful minutes this season. I said this earlier, but there's a chance that we don't have Tristan Thompson early in the season. And if that's the case, I really think you're going to see Taco Fall playing real minutes. Again, we loved seeing him come in last year. We loved chanting for him, but I think he could get real minutes this year. And I think that's fun. I think that'll be great, especially early in the season where it's not, detrimental to risk it on a guy like him. I'm excited to see him play. If he can get his footwork even better, and he has improved that, and his conditioning down, that's going to be another big thing, I think, conditioning. If he can get those two things down alone, he's taken a very big step towards carving out a real role for himself on a team. How do you feel about that, Vinny?
I think obviously he needs to improve his footwork, obviously, when thinking about it, but he was the G League on the G League All-Defensive team. I think that he can be a fantastic player for the Celtics. I do not think he can be an all-star. I do not think he'll be the best center in the game, but he can be a great player. You talk about these 7'5" players, coming in and not being able to contribute much. I really think that he can. I think that he can contribute some meaningful minutes and really be a good rim protector for us, and that's all we need him to be. And I think just making sure that he's not doing too much and making sure that he's doing exactly that, it will go a long way. And I would love to see him get meaningful minutes this year.
Yeah, rim protection and rebounding are the two things where if he can thrive at those, at an NBA level against NBA centers, that's going to be huge for carving out a role. Again, the concern with Taco is the fast breaks. You have to worry about a guy like that on those types of things. But in the half court, he can make himself a valuable asset in the half court. That's why conditioning, I think, is big for him. If he can make himself so that he's not 10 feet behind everyone else on a fast break, he really can find a spot for himself on a roster. Hopefully ours, for the future, obviously. This year, yes. I don't see us trading him this year randomly. I don't think he's even got that much value to be traded at the very moment. But I think Taco can contribute to a team in some capacity. I want to talk about our starting lineup because there's a lot of different ways we can go. Real quick, I want to talk about, and this is the quicker one because I think it's simpler, when we're healthy. Assuming everyone's here, I'm looking at it as Kemba, Jalen, Tatum, Rob Williams, and Daniel Tice. If everyone's healthy, I think that's a viable starting lineup. Again, we've heard a lot about Rob Williams starting, so at that point, that'll be a little bit into the season. And yes, this is with everyone healthy. I do still believe Daniel Tice should start over Tristan Thompson as well. Kemba, Jalen, Jason are no question. It's really just the bigs you got to ask about, and I think Rob Williams and Daniel Tice combo makes a lot of sense. Well, what do you think, if we're healthy, our starting lineup would look like?
Honestly, I think that they're going to roll something just similar to what they saw in the playoffs when Hayward's out. I think that they're going to roll with Walker, Smart, Brown, Tatum, and Theis. Running Tatum at the power forward, obviously, that's what to expect. That's what they ran in the playoffs, and they had some success with that in the playoffs. I mean, if you look at the Raptors series, if you look at the part of the Heat series, they had some success with that lineup. And I think I understand that makes sense. There's what to expect, and there's what I want. What I would love to see is Walker, Brown, Tatum, Tice at the power forward with either Thompson or Williams, depending on who's playing better at the moment, at the center position. That's what I would like to see. Obviously, I'd like to see Williams. That's what I would like to see because I think I like Smart coming off the bench. I like that spark coming off the bench. But I do think that if Smart can keep up the offensive game that he has been, I think that that's what you can expect him to start. Obviously, that's not what I think you'll expect to see in the start of the season. I think that you'll see Teague in there instead of Walker, or potentially you'll see Smart, Brown, Tatum, Tice, and maybe Williams. I think kind of what their opening day roster is going to be like is kind of an anomaly right now because they might choose to start Jeff Teague, which I think would make more sense. But so I think that you could see Teague, Smart, Brown, Tatum, and Tice to start. I think they are going to start with Tatum to power forward. Thinking like the Rockets went small ball, so thinking that you potentially do that, and if he did potentially go to 6'10", I mean why the hell not? But I think there's. I think Brad Stevens loves to, pick and plot players and play with them.
Yeah, I definitely sat and thought for a while about whether or not I think Smart is a starter when we're fully healthy. He's a starting quality player, but obviously just putting all your best players on the floor as your starting lineup isn't what happens usually. It's not always what makes the most sense. So I do think it's a toss-up. I think it'll depend on the night as well. I think versatility is a big thing for this team. And I agreed. I think start of the season, I really liked the prospect of a Smart, Brown, Tatum, Williams, Tice lineup. I think that sounds like a lot of fun. Teague starting might make more sense, but I really like Teague off the bench. I like Smart off the bench, but I really like Teague coming off the bench. I think I would prefer the Smart, Brown, Tatum, Williams, Tice, especially with the defense that comes with that lineup. Smart and Brown as your guards starting, that's a lot of defense. It's a lot of defense, solid offense from both of them. Brown obviously more so, but again, we've spoken about Smart a lot today. Smart has developed into a solid offensive piece. Tatum is good on both ends of the floor as well, and Tyson Williams are again both hard-working dudes that are going to have to compete. If there's anywhere we're going to get torn up, though, it is down low in that type of lineup. But honestly, I think that goes for any of our lineups you could spit out. I really like Teague off the bench, though. I don't want to see him starting, but I think you're right. I think we will early on until Kemba's fully healthy. With the bench rotation, getting into that, I feel like we can both agree if he's not a starter, Smart will be the guy getting the most minutes off the bench once again, right? I think, again, back to Teague, I think we'll see a decent amount of Teague. Just there's a lack of other quality ball handlers. I think Green and Pritchard could see some run time, especially when Kemba's out, but I don't know if either is going to overtake Jeff Teague's minutes, nor do I think they should. Maybe one of them will surprise us and come out on fire, but that's hard for me to imagine. Teague is just, I think he's going to be reliable, to say the least. I think Aaron Naismith is going to be seen a lot. He doesn't have much competition off our bench. Him was competing with Semi and Romeo Langford. I don't see why Naismith wouldn't get a lot of runtime, and I'm excited about that. I really want to see what he can do with a lot of minutes off a bench. I want to see that shooting ability at an NBA level again, like we spoke about. I want to see how that foot looks. And as I said earlier, I'm hoping to see Langford a lot in the rotation. Again, his offensive game for me is a big issue. I want to see him become a capable scorer. Forget even a good, just become capable. Show me you can score and show that defense. Because that's all I hear about him. He's a great defender. But I haven't seen enough of him. I want to see it. I want to see him go head-to-head with some NBA-level guys. Biggs, Grant Williams, and Thompson are going to get a lot of play time as well. We've talked about them. I think they'll be the main guys coming off the bench if they're not. Neither of them are starters. At least Thompson, I don't think Grant should be a starter unless there's an injury, as much as I love him. Taco, I only see if Thompson is out for a little bit, we're going to see him. Other than that, though, I think that's everyone that you're going to see a decent amount off our bench. And I know I named most of our roster, but that's how I expect our bench rotation to look. How did you feel about our bench rotation for this upcoming season? I mean, it seems pretty straightforward to me, but
yeah, you said it. I have nothing else to add. Honestly, you said everything I want to. I want to see more of Edwards, and that's the only thing I'll probably add. But besides that, I have nothing to add. You said exactly what I had written down. Honestly,
let's get bold now. What are you thinking for our win total? Let's assume we play an 84-game season. Let's assume COVID doesn't ruin us. I know they have a flexible schedule right now in place to help with that. But let's assume we get an 82-game season. I believe I said 84 a minute ago. Yeah. Let's assume we get an 82-game season. What are you thinking for our regular season record?
Let's go 82-0. Bold. No, I'm kidding. There's no reason why we shouldn't finish with at least 45 wins. If I had to grab a certain number, it'd probably be 50. I don't think we'll hit that 55 win mark. But, I think that we could potentially surprise a lot of people. I think the Nets could come slow out of the gate to start, so I think that could prove to our benefit. But, I think it kind of all depends. It all depends on health. And I know, obviously, that depends with every team, but, our team more than anything. So, I see no reason why we shouldn't finish somewhere between 45 and 50 wins.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. If we're not a 50-win team, I'm going to be disappointed. We missed that mark barely the past 2 seasons, and that was for various different reasons. But I think this is a team who should be expected to hit that mark. The league as a whole has obviously gotten better. I touched on that earlier. A lot of teams have gotten better. But I think this feels like a 50-win team to me. I feel like we should have hit it last year too, but, health, I couldn't be that mad. 2 years ago as well, health's been a big issue for us. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to say 55 this year. Now, do I believe that with all of my heart when I make that prediction? Not necessarily. I think 51 to 53 makes more sense. But I'm saying 55 and we're going to stick with it. But if we fall below 50, I'm going to be disappointed. Even if it's 49, I'm going to be a little disappointed. I know that doesn't fully matter. The playoffs are a completely different beast, but I really want to see that 50-win mark again. It's been a couple seasons now.
We have to also remember we didn't hit 50 wins last year because we also didn't play a full 82 games. So that has something to do with it too.
That is a fair point, yes. Who on our team do you think is going to be all-stars this year?
Brown and Tatum, I think, are the first two that I think of. You'd like to come make it. I think it depends on health. You have to also think that Kyrie's back, Simmons is back. Westbrook is now in the East. You have Trae Young. You have Lowry, who can kind of grab those spots. So Kemba might be on that border, might just miss it, might make it. Obviously I think that he should make it, but that's besides the point. But I think that Brown and Tatum will grab it this year.
100% agree. Brown and Tatum, I think, are the guys. And even if Kemba deserves it, I think, unless my prediction comes right and we take 55 games in an 82-game season, unfortunately, bias does come into play. I don't think they're giving 3 All-Stars to us unless we are incredible. I think we get capped at Tatum and Brown regardless. And like you said, there's a lot more competition this year. Westbrook is here now. Trae Young is getting better. Like you said, Lowry's always one of those guys where he plays so hard. He's a really good candidate for All-Star every year. Ben Simmons is a great guard. There's a lot of competition, and I don't think we get 3 All-Stars this season. That's hard for me to see. I would be surprised. I do think Brown makes that jump, though. I think Brown was close last year. I feel like if a couple more players dropped out, and I know that's you can say that about a lot of players, but you could have seen him in it last year, even as a fill-in. I think Brown and Tatum, though, are the dudes. I don't think Kemba makes it, whether it be because of the extra competition or not wanting to have 3 All-Stars from one team, which is fair. Now, the season as a whole, if I'm being brutally honest, I don't see this being a championship team this season. That pains me to say. I think, again, we should be in the Eastern Conference Finals. I do. I do think we're that quality of team. I don't think there's a lot of teams in the East better than us. I do believe we should be in those Eastern Conference Finals and potentially going to the finals. Again, it pains me to say it. I don't know that I see this team this season taking home a championship without some lucky bounces. Whether that be, and I'm not saying this, calling this lucky pains me because I don't ever wish injury on any player. I don't take rivalries that seriously. I just like to see good basketball, but without some other teams losing some players, I don't know that I see this being a championship team.
Granted, last season we didn't think we were going to go to the conference finals, and yet we were one or two games from the finals, and I think we would have matched up well with the Lakers. So I think that anything can happen any given season. So I don't want to totally count them out yet. But I think when you're talking about season finish, you have to think that we're going to finish somewhere around 3 or 4 again. I think that we should have finished above the Heat. I think the Bucks are going to grab the number 1 seed again. My bold prediction is I think the Nets are going to grab a 2 seed in the East. I think the Nets are going to be really good. I think that the Raptors could potentially finish above us, so that could potentially push us down to the 4. But I do think that we can make a run. We're known to make postseason runs, and and now that we have the experience of going to the finals, we have the conference finals. We have Tatum has more experience, Brown has more experience. I think that we could potentially do it. Kemba has more experience now doing it once. I think that we could potentially make a push, and like I said, anything can happen any given season, and I'm not discounting anything yet. I think that right now I'm just happy that we're going to be playing basketball given the year that we're doing, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, I don't want to discount us at all. Look, I definitely believe this is a team that can come out of the East. If not should, that might be a little bold to say. Who guards Anthony Davis? And I know that's presumptuous. We don't know if the Lakers are going to win the West, but theoretically, who's going to guard Anthony Davis? That's my main concern when I say I don't know that we're a championship team. I would almost rather face the Clippers. I don't know why I'm saying almost. Actually, thinking about it for a couple more seconds, I would definitely rather face the Clippers. I think a Brown and Tatum against playoff P and Kawhi is a lot more favorable. Anthony Davis scares me, and the Lakers got better this year. I know this is a Celtics show, so I don't want to get too much on them, but the Lakers got better this year somehow, which is insane. I know they lost some key pieces, but they made moves, and I think they got better, and it's scary. So I expect them to come out of the West, barring injuries. And I don't know how we stop Anthony Davis. Unless somehow Ainge still brings in Turner without giving up Tatum or Brown. Obviously not Tatum wouldn't go in there, but unless he can pick up Turner without giving up Brown, which I don't know the financials of that, what it would be. And even then, do you want Miles Turner to be the only guy that can even look at Anthony Davis in a series? I don't like the chances against the Lakers, and that's who I expect to see in the finals this year. All right, so I think that's been a good episode of Podcast Untitled. I think this went fairly well, Vinny. I'd like to close this out by saying that this will eventually be in a different place than it is now, and when that exists, it would be in the description of this video. This is not a basketball podcast, actually. This channel will be focused primarily on basketball, but this podcast in general, I'll constantly have different people on, and depending on who's on with me is what we're going to talk about. So we'll see from episode to episode what we're talking about, but if you want basketball content, you can hang around this channel. Other than that, when this podcast exists on the platform I plan on having it on, that will be in the description. So if you're interested in just me in general for some reason, you can check that out in the description. Vinny, you have anything to say in closing?
No, thank you for having me. This was fantastic. I'm very excited for the season to start next week. Couldn't be more ecstatic. Like I said, the fact that we're just playing basketball makes me happy. I feel like it's kind of what we need right now, and sports kind of what we need, and I'm very excited to see what the season is going to bring us.
Yeah, man, thanks for coming out and doing this with me. This is the first thing I'm recording ever. It's great to have someone sitting across from me to talk basketball with. It feels so much more comfortable speaking to someone. I think I told you I tried doing some practice runs on my intro, and talking to myself was driving me mad. Hopefully that's something I'll get better at, because I will have to do this on my own coming soon when I want to talk about basketball. But I really appreciate you. I appreciate your input on the draft and everything, man. We'll definitely have to have you back on when I get this fully up and running on its new platform that it's going to be on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always a privilege.
Yeah, man. And thank you for listening, everybody. Have a nice day, and I'll see you soon.